really a clinic because I'm not really trying to teach you anything. This is just my experience of trying to repair a locomotive. It's a kind of I'm sure Andy's well familiar with the things you can get into when you try to repair locomotives. And so it's just kind of a story that has a couple of twists along the way. What started all this was back in June, the Shoals Model Railroad Group I'd never been to. And they had they were open for the layout tour, and they had an op session over there. But I was so busy during the convention I couldn't get over there. So they have their meetings on the first Tuesday of the month, and then they usually operate on the third Saturday. So back in September, I wanted to go to their operating session, and so I was going to take a couple of my locomotives and consist them up and all that. I'm going to pull them off the shelf to make sure they ran. This was like on Wednesday before the operating session. I found out that one of them wasn't running correctly. In fact, when I bought it several years ago, and first thing I do when I buy a locomotive is put it on my programming track and do all the setup for CVs and sound levels and get it speed matched and all that kind of stuff. And it had a problem from the start, and I said, okay, I'm going to fix this one day. Well, I forgot about it, and it sat on my shelf for a couple of years, and I pulled it off and tried to run it to take it to the Shoals. I'd forgotten that it had a really bad sound coming out of it. It wasn't the sound from the speaker, the engine sounds. It was a really bad squealing sound. And I thought, okay, I've got to fix it. So this locomotive didn't go to the Shoals that day. So when I got back the next week, I said, all I got to do is put a little lubrication in it, sounds like, right? So that's where we begin. So on an Athern locomotive, the first thing, wake up, there we go. First thing you do is you take the shell off, right? And this is what you see. Fortunately for Athern, they're well-made locomotives. All you have to do is take the couplers off, and the shell just slides right off. There are no clips or additional screws or anything like that. It's a little tight, but you have to pull it off. And this is what you see. So the first thing that was kind of annoying, you see these wires. This locomotive has a little grain of rice light bulbs, incandescent bulbs, which look great, but the wires, it means the shell is attached to the locomotive, and it's hard to work with when you have this thing dangling off to the side. One of the things Athern does is the wires are attached to the decoder board here, and they have the wire fits through if you can see these unused tabs on the circuit board. Yep. Right here, the wire fits through the hole, and you clinch the wire on the bottom side, and they have these little plastic caps that fit over the tab. On one side of the cap, it's got a cutout for the wire, so where the wire fits in the hole, it fits around the wire and doesn't pinch the wire. The other side is solid, so when the wire goes through the hole and you clinch that, it keeps that wire tightly against the metallized part of that tab, so there's always good contact. I'm explaining that because it's relevant later on in the story. So at this point, I'm having to figure out where this squealing noise is coming from. And as you know, if you put a locomotive on the track and you turn the throttle up, it takes off. It's hard to tell what's going on when that happens. So if you're going to get into working on locomotives, one thing that's really nice to have are these things. Mm-hmm. These little roller stands. Okay, these are made by Bachmann. They're metal on each side, and the metal transmits the track power to these wheels, and in the middle is the insulator so it doesn't short out. And you set these on the track, so there we go. So that's what it looks like when you put your locomotive on these little rollers, and you can turn the throttle on and it runs in place and you can see what's going on. So what I did was I turned it on and everything was doing okay. And I could put my ear down against the locomotive and find out the squealing's coming from the back truck, the rear truck. Okay. Now one thing to note was when I first pulled it off the shelf, it ran fine on my little test track that I have. It went all the way around. Okay, it's just making a squealing noise. So now I'm thinking, okay, I got to put a little lubrication in here, and I've isolated it to the rear truck. And Next picture. This is what you see when you remove the speaker housing. The speaker housing is up here, and the speaker sits in this metal block, and it's the speaker housing. It also provides the weight on top of the truck. So there's a couple of screws. You just unscrew the screws, and the speaker comes off. And when you remove the speaker, you can see the wires. The speaker now is also attached to the frame. So I've got two things hanging off of the frame now that I have to deal with. But this is what you see. And here you see the wires coming up from the truck to attach to the circuit board. There are two little channels in the frame that allow the wires to sit in the channel so that they don't get pinched when you put the speaker back on, reassemble the speaker housing. But the main thing is right here you have a little plastic clip that sits on top of the gear housing, and this clip holds the truck into the frame. Now, if you know when you pick up the locomotive that the truck stays in place, that's why if you see these two little arms right here, that holds the truck into the frame so that the truck is free to rotate and also wobbles a little bit. But once you remove this clip by spreading it out, it just clips on, you got to spread it out a little bit. These are the arms that hold it in place, hold the truck in place. So once you've removed this plastic cover, there's really nothing holding this truck in the frame except for the wires. Okay. Wrong. Didn't mean to do that. So let's move on here. So once you remove the clip, you can see the worm gear. At this point, the worm gear will lift out, but I didn't need to do that. All I needed to do was put a little drop of oil right on the shaft on that side, and the shaft sticks out a little bit on this side. So I put a little drop of oil there. I thought, okay, maybe I fixed it. Well, so I reassemble everything. And you notice I put it back on the track so it'll run on the track, but I didn't reinstall the shell completely because you don't want to reassemble completely until you know you got it fixed. So after I added the little bit of oil to the worm gear, it ran around the track fine. No more noise, right? Except I noticed that when I'd let it run 2 or 3 times, I've noticed that when it reached a certain point on the track, it stopped, hesitated. And I give it a little push, and it would keep going, and then stop again. And then I give it a little push, and it kept going, and stop again. It wasn't doing that before. So now I got to figure out, okay, what's going on now? Because it ran completely around before, but now it's not. So I go back to where I set the shell off to the side, and I check all the wiring. I check the wiring of the motors and check the wiring, make sure it's connected for the pickup wires. And then I gave a little tug to the pickup wires at the truck. One of them had broken free, okay? And it was the one on the back left, the truck that I'd been working on. Somehow, in the process of moving things around and everything, that wire had broken free. So now I have to remove the side frame so I can get to the wire where it was previously attached. These things are not clipped on or anything, they're just press fit on, but they're on pretty tight. So it took a little while to get my little screwdriver in there and try to pry it off, but I finally got it off, and this is what the side frame looks like. Athern does a really good job of making sure that the track power can get from the wheels to the circuit board, because they have this brass fitting inside the side frame. You notice the bearings where the axle end fits into the wheels, of course, are metal. That fits into the bearing here, and this brass piece makes sure that there's continuity from both wheels. And then there's a little tab on the brass piece that the wire attaches to. Well, the previous wire, the original wire, was a 30 gauge wire, which is pretty damn small. And it was very difficult for me, of all people, to get that wire stripped properly and tinned. So what I did was I replaced it with a larger 26 gauge wire. And you can see that I tinned that wire, looped it through the loop, and then resoldered it. So that's the fix I had to make on that. Okay.
And it just brushes it from the wheel to that, or is it a bearing?
No, it's a bearing. It's a bearing. The metal axle of the wheel fits into that hole, which is a metal bearing.
Metal on metal.
Metal on metal. So it maintains good contact from the wheel to the brass pickup.
First thing I'll do is I'll take that connection, all those circuit board connections, I'll just power them straight up.
Well,
You're right, that's where you get more electrical issues between the circuit board and that tab.
well, one thing about it is the way Athern does it, if you need to remove the shell, the wires aren't soldered, so you can remove that cap and then take the wire out and then the shell comes off. Okay.
Right, these are lights, but this is power.
Yeah.
That's easy, once we get to that.
In this case, they had added on the original wire, they had a little piece of shrink sleeving on there, but it wasn't doing any good because it didn't fit all the way over the connection. It actually went to the end of the insulation, and when that wire moved a little bit, it broke right there, and it was 30 gauge wire.
It just fatigued
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Fatigue out.
Right, exactly. And that's why I use a slightly larger gauge wire, so it will be a little more tougher. And plus, there's not a lot of room right here at the end of the tab, so that wire has to come straight up. There's no room for it to come out to the side where you can fit insulation sleeving in it. So that's why I resoldered it without insulation sleeving, because everything around it is plastic, and I needed the wire to come straight up rather than out to the side.
Did you check the other side just to fix?
No, I didn't. I had a difficult time getting this off of the one side, so I did give the other wires a little tug, and they were still good. So okay, so this is what I was talking about. Once I replaced that wire, you can see the wire fits up through the hole, and you just replace that cap, slide that cap back on.
So that end really shouldn't be tinned.
I did tin it just so it would be easier to get through the hole.
Yeah,
So,
but you know what I mean. I clipped
well, Jacob had a good idea. For the pickup wires, you could even solder it and make sure it's always good.
Well, look, and the decoder buddy board is so cheap, you might as well put that.
Well, this is not a decoder buddy. It's a Tsunami decoder. That's the Tsunami decoder board right there.
so it's not cheap.
Yeah, it's not cheap. So I'll reassemble it. Right, gonna run another test, and I reattached the. Here you see the wire that I had to replace. Excuse me. And so I put it on the test track again. Let it run around. And I turned the throttle up, and nothing happened. And I played with the throttle, turned it down, turned it up, and I noticed the motor was making its humming noise. And I turned the throttle down, turned up, and the motor was, but the locomotive's not moving. I'm going, oh crap, what's happening now? So, as I said, one thing after another.
Yes.
So,
Oh,
when I turned the throttle up, I did notice that in addition to humming, the motor would turn like a quarter of a turn and then stop. And it would turn like a quarter of a turn and stop. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on here? So I finally decided I was going to help it. So I put my fingers on the flywheel and turn the throttle up and help the motor to turn. And I noticed it would turn a little bit and then stop, and I'd help it turn a little bit and stop. I said, well, something's binding up. I wonder what's going on. And so I just kept doing that. Turn it. And it finally broke free. And I noticed after it broke free finally, and I turned the throttle up and down, the motor was turning fine. It was running properly with the throttle setting, fast or slow, whatever. And at that point, but the locomotive still wasn't moving. Just the motor was turning. Okay, so when I turned the throttle up, I saw that the motor was turning. I also saw that the flywheels were turning. And I thought, that's strange. Notice down here I can look in and see the drive shaft on the front end. The drive shaft of the front end was turning, And I looked closer, the wheels were turning on the front end.
Skidding.
They were rotating in place. So something was binding back here where I'd been working, right? Because the back wheels weren't turning. So I take it off the test track, I take it back apart, remove the speaker, and this part falls out right there. That's the drive shaft. After I went, oh crap, I broke the drive shaft. And after thinking about it a little bit, I realized actually it was a good thing that I did, because otherwise I wouldn't have known what was going on, that the rear truck was binding up. So when I broke the drive shaft, that let me know that the motor was still good. It was turning with the throttle, and the front end was good because the wheels were spinning. It was something going on in the back end. So at least I found that out, okay? So that's what fell out. Now you'll notice that the drive shaft for Athern locomotives have a little hexagonal piece on the end that fits into the flywheel. And it's not glued or anything, not clipped in. It's just sitting there free. And if you'll notice on the universal joint, okay, there's a little bit of room for it to move back and forth, but it's not glued in or anything. It's just sitting there free also. So it's got a little bit of a play in it at the universal joint. Okay. So I went and took the worm gear out, had to unclip the wires, and at this point the truck will fall right out of the frame. So
It also freewheel now.
more about that in a minute. Okay. So I removed the rear truck from the frame. There's nothing holding it in place. Here's the speaker. Here's the shell. Let's move on. And this is the truck. And here's the wire that I replaced, right? As I looked at it closer, I saw a little piece of debris sitting right on top of the gear, the top gear. So I took that out and tried to do the rolling test, and it wouldn't roll. I said, well, I need to check the gears on the bottom. So what I did was I turned the truck over, and the Athern, you have this little plastic piece that clips on. You pry the little clips apart, and you can take this off, and you see all the gears. Now you notice that has to be upside down. Otherwise, when you do that and you turn it right side up, everything falls out.
Everything falls out.
So I'd made sure to keep it upside down, and then I found another little piece of debris right on top of one of these gears. And this is what the debris looked like. Two little pieces of plastic were sitting in the gear housing, and I have no clue how they got there.
This looks like the kits that are on the drive shaft.
I looked.
On the ball joint.
It could have been. Well, the ball joint that fell out was fine. It had the little end pieces on it. It was just separate, you know. I don't know where these are square too. These are like two little cubes of plastic. They're not round. They're square. I don't know where they came from. It looked like they broke off, but I looked everywhere. I couldn't find where anything like that broke off.
I can't tell you, maybe 3 or 4 of these.
And the other thing is that the gear tower is sealed, except, you know, where the worm gear sits, there's a little space, but everything else is sealed. I don't have any clue where they came from. Plus, the thing was running before I replaced the wire.
It's ground.
Anyway,
Chinese.
okay. So I solved the problem of the rear truck not working, not rolling, okay, because once I took the two pieces of debris out, it rolled fine.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so I reassembled everything, and this is what the truck, again, looked like. And at this point, it would roll. So when I reassembled everything, the only problem was I didn't have a drive shaft for the rear truck.
Oh yeah, I can still see the ball.
Yeah.
In there with the two tips on it.
Right. So I have to kind of think, okay, I probably need to go to the Athern website to order another drive shaft. Fortunately, I keep all of my train boxes of all of my rolling stock. They're in my attic, and I have big boxes with little boxes inside, and they're stacked up about 6 or 7 feet tall of all these boxes. I have to look through every one of these boxes to find the train box because I need the model number of the locomotive. So I looked through all the train boxes, and guess where I found the train box?
Bottom.
On the bottom. The last box I looked in on the bottom, and it was, as I opened it up, it was sitting right on top. So I pull it out, I get the model number of the locomotive. Fortunately, when I opened the box, I had the instruction sheet inside, right? Athern's real good because their instruction sheet shows the exploded view of the locomotive. So I pull out the part number of the drive shaft, right? So I go to the Athern website, you go to support, the support tab, you click on that. Then there's another tab you can click on called parts. So I clicked on that, I did a search of the part number, it didn't come up. And then I just scrolled through, and Athern does sell a whole bunch of different drive shaft parts. Some of them are, real short, some of them are real long. But I didn't find the one I was looking for. And I noticed as I was looking, when they show a drive shaft, they give the part number and they also give the length. So I went back and took out the front drive shaft and measured it. And this is the part number, and this is what the drive shaft should look like. And that was the length that I needed. Okay? This is the part number. The part number they showed on the website was this one, but it was 1.055 inches. Okay, so I'm thinking, well, maybe I can buy this one and it'll work because, you got a little bit of play there between the flywheel and the... So with all this information, I finally decided, okay, I can email Athern and find out if I can order this part. I sent them an email and I asked, do you have, this part that I need is not on your website. Is it available? First question. Second question, if it's not available, can I substitute this one? Because it's, there's not that much of a difference. It's 45 thousandths of an inch difference. So with a little bit of play, it should work, right? Fortunately, they emailed me back and say, no, 90125 was available. You can order it. Great. I'd like to order it. So I sent an email back replying, yes, I'd like to order. They sent me another email back saying, okay, we need your name, address, part, locomotive model number, part number that you want, and your payment information and all that. So I did all that. And of course, emails take several days, So I said, yes, I'd like to order it. So I finally get another email back from it. In fact, it's not Athern. Horizon Hobby is the parent organization of Athern. So all these emails are between me and Horizon Hobby. So I finally get an email back saying, okay, here's your order. It's being prepared. We'll let you know when it ships. And they send me the invoice. I don't know if you can read this or not, but the part itself right here, $1.75. How much does the shipping? $6.99. And you add the tax, sales tax, this one little part cost me $9.40.
Or more.
There's more to the story. Okay. But wait. This is where it really got interesting. Okay. So I replied, here's all the information you need, please. I would like to order this part. They sent me back, okay, you're ordered. Well, a couple of days later, I got a notice, okay, your part has been shipped, and it's going by FedEx. Right? And so, okay, I get an email from FedEx. Your parts out, your package is out for delivery. You get another email, your package has been delivered. Great. So I go out to my front porch. They'll live, packages on your front porch, whatever. I look around, there's no package. I said, well, maybe it's in an envelope. Maybe they put it in the mailbox. I go look in the mailbox. There's no package. So I go to the FedEx website, I put in the tracking number, and they delivered it to Georgetown, Texas. So I download the proof of delivery, and it was delivered to Georgetown, Texas. So I contact FedEx and I say, wait a minute, my package says, you told me the package was delivered, but you delivered to the wrong address. What do I do? Well, the bottom line of the story was I as the receiver, could not file a claim. The vendor that sent it had to file the claim with FedEx to get it replaced. So I go back to Horizon Hobby and send them an email saying, you shipped the thing. FedEx said they delivered to the wrong address. You guys need to talk to FedEx and see what happened. So I get an email back from Horizon Hobby and it says, you mean you don't live at this address in Georgetown, Texas? I said, no, I don't. I said, now let's go back. Only original invoice, they got the correct address in the sold to block, but there's nothing in the ship to block. And I sent an email back to Horizon saying, I have no clue where Georgetown, Texas came from. So Horizon Hobby finally corrected it. They sent me another invoice with the correct ship to address, and I finally got my part. And in fact, the envelope contained 2 drive shafts. I only need 1, so now I have a spare drive shaft. And now the locomotive is repaired and is running fine.
You can hang it off the side like a re-railer.
The bottom line is a simple repair that probably should have taken less than an hour to do, took about 3 weeks. End of story.